What should you do when you make something and your design turns out to be okay, not great? Do you convince yourself it's fine and doesn't need more work? Maybe just trash it and start from scratch? In this video, I face down one such failure from my recent office build and pick up a new tool and new skills that might just revolutionize my creative process. A while back, I built my dream office in this old hayloft in my barn workshop. And one of the details I was most excited about were these custom sconces I designed for the space. The only problem was they're meant to have a 3D printed base, and I didn't have an affordable way to do that because I don't have a 3D printer. So I just pivoted and developed a quick plywood solution to make it work to mount the light fixtures using this aluminum cleat. However, after 6 months of use, it turns out this solution is a bit janky. The bulbs kind of stick out of the top of the shades, which never really sit straight, and the shades themselves are just too good at blocking light. There are literally 20 light bulbs in this room, but even with the dimmer maxed out, it's still just kind of dark. It hits the moody tone I was going for, but without an option of just normal brightness. On its face, my sconces were kind of a fail. Well, after I shared my office video, I had a ton of folks telling me I should just bite the bullet and get a 3D printer. So I reached out to the folks at Bamboo Lab and they kindly agreed to sponsor this video. And they sent me this. This is the Bamboo Lab H2D, and it's as big as a mini fridge and weighs more than both my toddlers combined. But it is a beast. Not only does it sport one of the largest print beds on the market, but this one isn't just a 3D printer. It's also a laser, a blade cutter, and a pen plotter. And in order to fix the problems with my wooden sconce shades, we're going to need that laser feature. Now, I'm no stranger to trying new things. In fact, it's kind of a staple of what I do on this channel. But I have to admit, I was pretty nervous about climbing the 3D printing learning curve because I assumed I had to learn all about slicing software and hundreds of overwhelming settings, not to mention all the different types of plastic filament and their acronyms. PLA, PETG, ABS, ASA, PACF. And while it took me watching several lengthy YouTube videos to learn about types of printable plastic and what each one is good for, which I'll link in the description, learning how to print in Bamboo Studio couldn't be simpler. I got started by printing a few things for my shop that I found on MakerWorld, literally from the Bamboo Handy app on my phone using PLA, which is kind of the generalist of printing plastics. And when the time came to start printing my own models, using Bamboo Studio to slice and print them was as easy as just adding them to the print bed, choosing the right filament for each object, and hitting print. But suffice it to say, my fears about climbing the 3D printing learning curve were basically resolved by the time my first set of sconce bases were done printing. I started by printing the original design I came up with. And it definitely works as a proof of concept, but it needed to allow a little more space around the bulb for my shade upgrade to work. So I went back to the drawing board and made a couple more iterations, printing out prototypes using fast and filament efficient settings. I had played with adding these slots on the sides to let some light out, but abandoned that because they made the parts really fragile and it was tedious to remove the support material they required. Eventually, I landed on this iteration, which is version 4. The wall plate component is the same size as the sconce shade now, and the shade plate extends the depth of the sconce enough to make the required space around the bulb. Okay, moment of truth.
Alright, does it work? Oh yeah. I love it. Let's see it with the light on. Looks great.
Now we just need to make 9 more sets of these. When I decided to pursue getting a 3D printer, I mainly wanted to make tools and practical stuff that makes my shop better and more organized. It definitely wasn't so that I could print my wife a nice vase, or cool video game figures, or this neat toy car for my son, but I love that this printer is a tool that can easily handle both with the same level of precision and quality. And I've already pulled off some other pretty cool projects with it using my own designs, like this homemade dish detergent bin I designed for my wife, this base for my camera rig that keeps it from falling over when I set it down, and this little custom-sized drill stop collar that I needed in a pinch and was able to design and print in just 20 minutes. When I started thinking about how to solve the problem of the sconce shades blocking too much of the light, I knew I didn't want to just settle for printing plain white ones, though just for fun, I did do that. So when Bamboo Labs sent me the Laser Edition H2D and their 40-watt laser module, it got me thinking a lot more creatively. Initially, my idea was to just cut out a window in the front and print a thin white rectangle to diffuse the light. But then I learned that if you turn the top and bottom shell layer settings to 0, you can see all the cool patterns the different infill settings make. And this was a huge inspiration for what's coming next. I knew this was something we actually had to explore, because it meant maybe we could cut a big window out of the front of the sconces like I was thinking, but instead of just gluing one thing into the window to diffuse the light, we could create a system that would let us make interchangeable inserts and try all sorts of ideas. The first thing I needed to do was mock up an extra sconce shade so that I could figure out how to cut hardwood this thick with the laser module on the H2D. The technical specs on the 40-watt module say it's rated for cutting basswood plywood up to 15 millimeters thick, but we'll have to see what that translates to on this 6 millimeter thick red oak. I won't get into the details on how to use Bamboo Suite, but this is the free software that you use to run the laser and cutting modules with the H2D, and like Bamboo Studio, it's really intuitive, especially if you've used other laser engraving software programs before. My tests on 1/2-inch birch plywood proved the H2D can cut through material this thick, no problem. And after a bunch more tests on the mock sconce shade itself, I had all the settings dialed in and was ready to go. Despite my successful tests, I was still a bit nervous to commit to cutting on a real shade, but I finally just decided to send it and knock out these windows on the real thing. And it turned out great. In order for my idea to work, I needed a way to hold the inserts in the sconce shades. So I came up with this Z-shaped profile that makes a U that can hold the insert up against the front of the shade, but also allow the insert to be pushed up and replaced from the top. I temporarily attached it to a shade with double-sided tape to test it out with a basic white test insert. But later I'll install these permanently with epoxy. Now that all the technical stuff was worked out, I could really just let my ideas run wild for what else to do with the inserts. I started by making all the basic infill ones, and this one called Octagram Spiral surprised me. It feels very retro and cool, and it shimmers as you see it from different angles. One concept I enjoyed playing around with is this idea of layering thick black images behind a plain white front. It creates this shadow puppet effect where you can see the design but still get the light diffusion. And I couldn't resist using it to make these Lord of the Rings themed ones I printed. But my favorite design for everyday use are these ones that take advantage of the fuzzy skin settings. It's just a texture that I like, and they feel like rippled glass to me while still doing a great job at diffusing the light. I decided to make a whole set of these for the room. And I know there is so much more that I could do with this idea. What design would you make for your shade inserts? Let me know in the comments. And since you made it this far, I want to say thank you for watching and invite you to subscribe and give it a like if you're enjoying this video. Failure has the power to cause deep emotions in us that can strike at the core of what we believe about ourselves. It makes you want to either settle for mediocrity or just throw it all away. But if you're willing to patiently push through the issues and keep going, it can evolve into something better than you imagined. I'm excited to have 3D printing as a tool in my shop to help me solve problems moving forward. And I want to give a huge thanks to Bamboo Lab for sending me the Laser Edition H2D. If you want to find out more about it or other Bamboo Lab printers, there's a link below in the description. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.